Okay, I think we're going to start. Hopefully some more folks will have an opportunity to join in before we get into the content too much. My name is Mike McCreary, and I work with ASAP in Asheville, and have managed the Asheville City Market since it opened in 2008. And this webinar is the final presentation in a series of live workshops that were conducted around the state beginning back in November at Wilmington, Winston-Salem, Durham, Concord, West Jefferson, and Asheville. And there are three sections, three topics for the content. The first one should be on your screen now, the first presentation, Sell More. The second is Marketing and Promotion, and the final presentation is on SNAP. And that's SNAP at Farmers Markets, a little bit of CSA too. So I just wanted to let everyone know that if you attended a workshop at one of the locations I mentioned, this is the same content today and the same PowerPoint presentations that I'll be going through. So you're welcome to see them again, but be warned that it is the same content that you would have seen in the live workshop. So there will be PowerPoint presentations, and I will be previewing each of these for you, not actually doing the same workshop presentations that were done live. Those three presentations took well over 4.5 hours, so this is the condensed version. And really, it's intended as a preview for folks who haven't seen it, to have a look, ask questions, and then we revisit at a later date. And I think I would say that so it has been condensed to roughly an hour or a little bit longer, depending on how our questions go. But I also want to share that it may be as important as the content is the opportunity to connect with each of you and your markets across the state, or at least begin to connect with each of you. And I'd like to follow up this webinar, which is condensed and abbreviated, with the opportunity for more connections with each of you, either by questions today during the webinar or follow-up emails. And I also want to mention an opportunity that's going to be coming up late in the year. ASAP and RAFI, two organizations here in the state, are working right now to schedule and plan the content for a statewide conference that's going to be held in Winston-Salem on December the 8th. It's going to be called the Connect to Direct Conference, which is a reference to direct sales from farms and vendors to customers, and will include and be appropriate for folks at farmers markets, those who handle CSAs, farm stands, farm stores to attend. And your input on what we should include as topics or issues at that conference is going to be very important. So today is just the beginning or a continuation of the opportunity to have an exchange and some peer support and take on some issues and concerns. And hopefully we will all be talking and meeting more in the future, either by email or at the conference in December. So if you are participating in this webinar or registered for it, you'll be receiving an email with more details about the conference later. If you have any questions as we go through the material, through the slides, through the PowerPoint presentations, please feel free to type them in the chat box and post them there. And I will do the best I can to pause and see if I can respond to those as they come in. And the last note is there will be an evaluation email that you'll receive probably later this week asking you for feedback on the presentation. So if anyone has any questions, go right ahead. But I am going to start sharing with you the first content area, which is Sell More. And Sell More is intended for vendors at markets to, there are some basic things that folks do. This presentation is how to do a little bit better. So there's some tips and guidelines in here that I'd like to share that you could share if you're a vendor, therefore you, if you're a market manager or someone who supports markets, this would be a presentation you could forward on to others or share with them. And I should have mentioned that these presentations and all the resources that are mentioned in them are available online at ASAP's website. If you have any problem clicking through and finding them, let me know, and I can just email me and I can direct you to the right links. We just had a momentary technical problem. There is a handbook that's associated with these three workshops called Making the Most of Your Market, Sales, Snap, and Promotions. And that handbook is available online at the ASAP website. One of the bits of material that's in that handbook is called Maximizing Your Sales. It's from the Farmers Market Federation in New York. And I would encourage you, if there's just one piece of information, one document, one guide that you would like to share with your fellow vendors or with vendors at your markets, that would be the one to share. It's about 5 or 6 pages long, and it really highlights some of the best tips and guidelines for improving sales at a market. So maximizing your sales is something you could print out or share digitally with folks at the markets, and I think you'd find it very valuable. It's the best piece of single source of information I've seen in the workshops that I've done in preparing this sort of content. Well, I guess we won't do a participant survey. I do know that those of you who registered, there seems to be about 30 markets that are represented here today in the webinar, which is a lot of fun. I'm glad so many of you could come. There are some folks in other professions that are associated with health and well-being that are with us too, so we'll just press on. Friendly and authentic. To set the stage for vending at a market, I think it's important to keep in mind that this is a slightly different place than maybe some other places where vendors gather and sell their product. It is a friendly and authentic environment, and as I'm fond of saying in the workshops, I would buy produce from this fellow. So, increasing sales, there are 3 targets for increasing sales, and I share these with you. Let me just go through them here. Attracting more customers is probably where folks start and stop when they're thinking about improving sales at a market. In the years that I've managed the market, when sales are not going well or they seem to be slow, the comments I most often hear are how can we attract more customers here? And that's certainly part of selling more, is just bring more folks who are shoppers into the market. But there are a couple other ways that you can increase sales. I just become slightly troubled to confirm that everyone's hearing me. Could someone just type me a little chat that says everything's good? Thank you. Another way to think about increasing sales involves increasing the frequency of visits. So if someone comes once a month and you can get them to come twice a month, you've now doubled the opportunity for sales. If they come every week, it's 4 times as many opportunities to sell. And the point about this is it is important to attract more customers, but it's also important to figure out ways, methods, means to get the folks who are coming to come more often. If you have loyal customers that come every week, obviously that's the best thing to have. At Asheville City Market, we do have folks who come less frequently than that. So it's part of the solution to improving sales is to figure out how to encourage the customer to come back more often. And finally, how do you increase the basket size? There's a lot of different words for this. You get someone who's buying $10 to increase their purchase to $15 each time. Someone just emailed, I think you need to turn down your speakers. My tech support just left the room, so there's feedback coming through. Hold on a second. Is that better? Okay, I think I know what was happening there. If that returns, please let me know. And now I have to do a technical check-in with my excellent tech support. They were hearing me through your computer, so there was feedback. So I just moved it away. Thank you. All right, it's great now. Wow. All right. Where were we? So increasing sales, more customers, get them to come more frequently, and increase the amount that they purchase each time they stop at a vendor. And each of those, while sometimes that you can do things that improve the opportunity for all three of those elements of improving sales, they really can sometimes be different sorts of things. And I hope that during this presentation you're going to be seeing some tips and guidelines on how to accomplish each one of those. Selling more, I have broken this presentation into three segments in terms of how to sell more: presentation, information, and invitation. And now I'm going to go a little bit more quickly through these because I think if you want to go back and look at them and just think about it a little bit, or if you have any questions about them, that's fine. But I think most of this is fairly straightforward at this point. Color sells. Color is impactful. The images that you're seeing on this slide are purposeful. They're not accidental color. They are things that the vendors have done either by positioning things or backgrounds or combinations that result in sort of a striking palette of colors that attract attention and improve the possibility of sales. Because part of sales, of course, is just getting folks' attention. Stand-ins, there can be a challenge for folks who have items that are difficult to display. In the foreground of this image, there's some pasta that's being sold, and that's frozen and in a freezer behind the table. So every week the folks bring that out and put it on the table so that they have a stand-in. Well, that is their product, but there are other ways. I think maybe the best stand-in I heard from a workshop that I did recently was for eggs. And at this point, I would quiz everyone about what the stand-in was, so you can think for a moment. Sometimes you can put the eggs out on the table and rotate through those if it's not too hot, if it's not August. But this vendor at another farmer's market had decided to bring chickens. So she had a couple of her most friendly chickens on display, and that, I think, is a brilliant idea. If your host will allow you to bring animals onto the market, everyone who walked by her booth noticed that there were live chickens, and many of them went over to visit. So stand-ins for her eggs that she was selling was actually had the live chicken there, and that is an excellent option for presentation. Abundance sells and needs to be created regardless of how much product that one has. So the more creative you can be in sharing a display that represents an appearance of abundance, the more attractive it will be. The slide to the left where the carrots are stacked high, that display is probably about 5.5 feet tall. There's a saying you may have heard about stack it high and watch it fly. So there's a lot of both anecdotes and sort of stories about how to do things well. Some of it's based on research, and some of it's based on the experience of vendors at markets. And the stacking it high has gotten that little saying going because apparently it's effective. There was something else I wanted to say about abundance. Maybe I'll hold on. Less can be more. So as I mentioned a moment ago, in this previous slide, there is an abundance. In these displays, there's the appearance of abundance, at least to the left, and you can see the impact of the image to the right is that it looks like there isn't as much there as there could be or should be. It isn't as attractive, and that produce can be reorganized to look like it does on the left. So less can look like more. I remember what I wanted to say. As I go through these, I should have prefaced this earlier, there are sort of rules or guides or tips that most of the time work. There are occasionally exceptions, and I want to mention one now in terms of abundance. We had a soap vendor at one of the workshops who had 20 or 25 varieties of soap, all kinds of combinations, and he believed that by putting those out there, it would give folks such a wonderful opportunity to choose that it would improve his sales, which is what I would do if I were him. And things were going okay, and he decided to experiment and dropped the number of soaps that he had on display to like 5. And what happened to sales? They increased significantly. Now, in that case, the abundance was actually a bit overwhelming and gave folks too many choices to actually be able to effectively shop. So one of the lessons of this, and one of sort of the truisms of selling more, is that individual vendors have to experiment, and they have to test their circumstances, their customer base, and their product in different ways, using some of the tips and guidelines that are being presented here, but then testing them. Moving things around, trying different things is all part of finding your niche and your ability to sell more as an individual vendor with specific products at a specific market. I ask this question, I go through a series of which one of these is best, and it's almost always the second one. A lot of vendors are of a mindset where you set up, sell, and pack up and go home. But studies have shown that an active vendor is more approachable. And not someone who looks so busy that they can't answer a question or they can't interact with you as a customer, but someone who's sort of fluffing or restocking or moving something around is easier for the customer to approach than someone who's standing still and sort of immobile and not doing anything. So time well spent, set up, sell, restock, and just continue throughout the entire market time, straight up through close. Again, the time what needs to be spent here is to get these containers to look more abundant. Be creative. I'm feeling a little cautious about the time, but folks need to, if I were shopping for a plant, I would go to the house plants folks that say they can help me buy a plant I won't kill. Sense of humor is good. The fellow with a Harley Davidson, he was selling shrimp for a couple, 3 years before he changed his display, and basically he had shrimp in freezers. He didn't display them because they would thaw out, and his sales were okay. It happened that he wanted to buy a motorcycle, and when he got his new bike, he also purchased this rig that you see there. Nothing changed, same guy, same shrimp, but the display, which is obviously eye-catching, increased his sales significantly. Obviously, folks can't go out and just buy new vehicles, that will increase their sales. But the point is, this creativity doesn't have to be expensive. You're going to see it near the end of the presentation, a vendor who uses an umbrella like this one rather than a canopy. And he's a regular farmer, a produce vendor, but he's designed his stand to look significantly different than other stands. And part, like I said, of selling more is just attracting attention. So I think folks need to step back and consider all the possibilities, including how their booth looks, whether they use an umbrella or whether they use a canopy. And there may be other options out there that haven't even come to my attention. Part of the solution for selling more is going out and seeing what other folks are doing, because there are a lot of clever folks out there, there are a lot of creative folks out there doing interesting things with their product and with their space. Signs and labels. This individual has taken signs to a new level. They are almost as eye-catching and appealing as the plants themselves. So this is signage can be minimal. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it has to be there. And labeling of the product is important too. Like I said, it doesn't have to be pre-printed like the jam. It could be handwritten like the kale. There are all kinds of ways to present information. This is catching on. More and more vendors are using the tall chalkboard. This is the pasta vendor. And the nice thing about this is customers will crowd in front of that to buy the pasta and block any view of what's on the table, what's there. This way, anybody walking by can still see what this vendor is selling. And there's a nice other effect here that's sometimes I'm just kind of amazed about what works and what makes a difference. And sometimes it's unintended and unplanned for, and you go, wow, that's really a good idea. How did that happen? And what I'm talking about here, you'll notice on the boards that there are a couple or three things that have been crossed out. Let me ask you, if you're a vendor, how often someone has walked by your booth and said, I'll be back in a minute, let me walk around and check everything out. Whether they come back or not is uncertain, but I hear that a good bit at markets. People want to browse around and look. Sort of the unintended, and I don't think they intended this, the unintended impact of crossing out the product on these large signs is it creates a sense of urgency for the customer. They begin to see that things that were available to them are now gone. And this will appeal to folks' sense of, I need to stop right now and decide what I want and make a purchase, because if I walk around the market and come back, what I want might be gone. I don't think they designed signs for that. I mean, I think the sign design was straightforward just to get the information out there. The unintended impact was to get folks to stop and shop right then as they went by the first time. So there's stuff, I mean, part of, like I said, look, while you're on the market, if you just stand in front of different booths and you see something interesting, I like to just stand there and stare at it and think, what's happening here? What's the impact between the vendor, the product, and the customer? And you discover these kind of helpful things that may be a surprise. This slide, it's a little hard to see. This sign and labeling has been done twice. Typically, all vendors will, or most vendors, will put signs at the product level with the product description, the price, maybe a little bit extra information. It's hard to see, but there's a whiteboard up above where everything that's displayed and signed on the table is repeated up above. Now, folks, and this is a booth this is the one that was, there was a photo earlier of how stack it high and watch it fly. This booth can get very busy. It can be full of PC next to anything there, and you certainly can't read the signs. So they decided to post it up above. Now folks who are just walking by, who are waiting, or who are waiting in the space to get up and make their purchase, can see the prices and the product that's available. And they also get to cross off things as they sell out, so it has the same potential impact as the pasta signs did. More information is better. I like to ask folks what they think that little sock monkey vendor is selling, that she's selling knitted socks. And she's created a whole little, I don't know, museum display of her hobby and of her art and craft. Wild Salmon Company is displaying a map, and I'm not sure what he's saying right there, but he could very well be saying, and we catch our salmon right here, and point to the map. A visual display of a farm or a bakery or anything that gives the customer an opportunity to see and learn a little bit more about the vendor is helpful. The handwritten sign about the ginger, again, it doesn't have to be something that's high tech or high quality or pre-printed. It can be something that just in the moment is of interest to the shoppers. So we have presentation done. Invitation. I've become more and more convinced in the later years here at the Asheville City Market that one of the keys to all of this is engagement of the customer, the live engagement. The signs, the ads. We're going to talk about marketing and promotion in the next section. That's all well and good, but it feels to me increasingly, and maybe this is wisdom that most people realize, but I lost track sometimes, that we need to talk to our customers and engage them in different ways, and invitation is one of the ways that we can do that. Sampling. This is one of those where I think it was the University of Kentucky Extension, I'm sure it's been done elsewhere. There actually have been studies about sampling and its impact on sales. And it's consistently found that if you do sampling, a vendor that does sampling increases their sales. And however they did the research and sorted it out, that's the conclusion that comes back consistently. So I appreciate, as a market manager and working with a lot of different vendors, that sampling is time consuming. You are distributing products, so there's some loss there. But if there's one thing that a vendor should do, this would be, in terms of inviting folks into their booth, sampling is it. I'm not going to talk about food safety issues. I think that's a separate thing. I will just say that sampling can be done safely, and you can have good food safety practices and do sampling that will not increase the risk of anyone eating something they shouldn't. But it is part of the this element would be to pay attention to food safety, but that would be another workshop. Most of the time, at least before I started to think about more, when I would speak about sampling, I'd be talking about tasting things. But we have other senses, and there are other ways to sample. The candle down there at Bonnie Bath, now that aroma is not going to carry out into the market, but if you were to walk up to the booth, you get to sample the scent of that product from the candle. To the right, I don't know if you can make out what that is, but that's trout, and that's been fried up. And that you can smell out into the booth. People could be walking 20 feet away from that booth, and they will get a whiff of the trout that's been prepared to sample. The corn is a fun one for me. And I just want to throw this in while it popped into my head. The customers that you're trying to attract and the customers that you're trying to appeal to are each different. There is no one way. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in just a second in terms of more about product display. But I will share with you that I will never buy an ear of corn without opening it up and looking at it. Now you'll have other folks who walk up who'll just grab 6 ears of corn and they're gone. But I will walk up and peel at least one of them back to see what the corn looks like. So, at least for customers like me, it makes sense to do a visual sampling, to actually peel back. I mean, it's kind of like, why not? If the corn looks great, and it does, peel one back and let folks see it. So it is not just obviously being able to taste, smell, visual sampling. These are all possibilities that may not apply equally to all vendors, but they're things that folks need to think about in terms of their own individual products. Demos, same sort of thing. This often involves more arts and crafts. This is the woman with the sock. She has an antique sock making machine, and she demos. She's making product while she's sitting at the market. Across the way from her, at this particular market, is someone who makes jewelry, and he's tacking on his anvil, shaping the jewelry into the final piece. So demoing is another possibility. Again, there are maybe not a lot of options. You know, plant care, I'm not sure. We had a repotting demonstration. It does seem to apply most often arts and crafts, but I think folks can be creative in thinking about the possibilities. This may be my favorite slide. Invitation, sales speak. Again, I asked the participants at the live workshops to tell me which of these is the best option, and it's, as I've said, it's always the last one. And the reason why it's the last one is because the first two can be answered with no, or no thank you. Would you like to try some cheese? No, thank you. I just brushed my teeth, or whatever. Have you tasted our cheese? No. The last one is really not a question that it's not even a question, it's an invitation. Have some cheese. This is a cheese vendor at Asheville City Market. I've watched them do this week in, week out. We have a second cheese vendor that did not do this until they saw this presentation, and now both of them have a basket of crackers. They lean out to the folks as folks can buy and say, would you like to try some cheese? Or have some cheese. So you're handing out crackers, which everyone will love a cracker, and you're saying have some cheese. There it goes. And I'm absolutely certain that saying C is more successful in having folks come up and try some cheese than any other way of approaching it. It's not forcing anyone to eat the cheese. No one's going to come up and sample the cheese who doesn't want to, but it's exceedingly more likely that if you say have some cheese, folks will stop and have some cheese. One of the methods that we talked about, or that I talked about earlier on in terms of increasing sales, is increasing the basket size, turning a $10 sale into a $15 sale or 20 into 25. There's nothing wrong with saying, can I get you anything else, the A, or what else can I help you with? C comes from another vendor, Eileen at Old Turtle Farm, who had this wrap-up sort of 10-second way she would end a sale when someone was purchasing something from her booth. What else can I get you? We have this, we have that, look over here. This I just harvested last night. Whatever it was, she knew what she was going to highlight in addition to whatever the folks were purchasing. And just like this, the Have Some Cheese, this worked. And Eileen happened to be a marketer she was a professional marketer, and so this was something that came from her experience and expertise over the years. But every vendor should know Have Some Cheese or whatever, have some whatever. And every vendor should know that one of the keys to increasing sales is that last few seconds as the money's about to change hands, you invite them to consider something else. Again, nobody's being forced, nobody's being pressured. You're engaging the customer in such a way that increases the likelihood that you will sell more, that they will buy more, that you will sell more. So if I were coaching vendors, we would talk about, well, what's your product and what's on the table today? What's on the table from week to week? How can you invite the customer to take a look, just glance to one side or the other, and consider adding something to their purchase? And if 80% of your sales come from 20% of your customers, which is sort of a standard saying out there, you really do want to spend time engaging the folks who are making purchases. It may be, I don't know this, I'm just going to throw it out there, it may be more significant than actually attracting new customers is to get the customers you have to shop more often and to purchase more when they're there. All of these are equally valid and fine. The point is, if you have a line in your booth, if a vendor has a group and they're working and trying to do customer service with folks ahead of other folks, there absolutely has to be a moment where other folks who are waiting are acknowledged in some way. Whether it's just, hi, I'll be with you, it's just a second to look up, make eye contact, and say, I'm inviting you to stay because I'll be with you in a moment. If folks are just standing in line and they're not acknowledged, or they're waiting to be served and they're not acknowledged, there are a lot of other vendors around the market where they can go and just step up and have someone help them. So this is another small thing that actually makes, I think, a big difference, or has the potential to make a big difference. One of the ways to sell more is to get people to come back more often. And that is what this Sales Speak slide is about, inviting people to come back next week. I know it's time consuming, and there's a lot of things that vendors have to do to prepare and farmers have to do to be ready to sell at market. But there needs, in my opinion, it is helpful to the vendor if they have given some thought to what's going to happen next week. The next week, and that they can share that information with a customer as they come up to shop and buy something. So the customer's getting ready to leave the booth, and you say, by the way, next week we're going to have something wonderful. And it kind of doesn't matter what it is, it just matters that you're sharing that there's some motivation to come back. Sometimes it can be very powerful motivation. Like, we'll be harvesting tomatoes next week for the first time, and tomato season's just starting, and we'll have them next week. That will get folks' attention. It could be just something that you already have, we're going to have next week, we're going to have the following week. But you're drawing attention to it in some kind of featured, focused way that gives people, plants the seed that it would be a good idea for them to come back next week. And all of these is about engaging the customer. I just think this is I just think this is crazy. I know I've heard this before. You probably have already heard it elsewhere in different ways. And what I like to say when I'm in a live workshop is, 60% of what you're getting from me is not coming out of my mouth. Of course, 100% of what you're getting from me right now is coming out of my mouth. But if you're standing at a market vending and you have arms folded, leaning back against your truck, you are sending unspoken messages to the customers. Yeah, I think that's just unquestioned. That folks who are sitting there sort of perched, looking like they're waiting for you to come up and buy something from them. This is one of those are not as appealing. This is also plays into the staying active and staying busy at your booth. So you're moving around a little bit. You're not just sort of perched, waiting for someone to come up and talk to you or make a purchase. And I'll say this, unless you have an eye condition, you need to take sunglasses off. If you walk around a market, if you're a vendor, take your sunglasses off. If you're a market staff and you're walking around and you see farmers, vendors with sunglasses on, suggest that they take them off. Because there's nothing more important in that instant of first time coming into a booth than eye contact. There needs to be eye contact, and you just can't get that with sunglasses on. Listen, the rest of this is fairly straightforward. But then part of me wonders, if it's so straightforward, why are so many vendors standing with their arms folded looking like they don't want to be bothered? So it is important, staff at markets, market managers who are listening, to tactfully suggest to your vendors, that there are ways to behave that, and they're I mean, that's 60%. This is a message that should get out. It's not just about what you say, it's about how you look and what you're doing with your body and your voice and your eyes. All customers are not the same. Again, it's tricky, it can be difficult depending on the product you have, but the more options you give customers, the broader the appeal to the customers walking by. Everyone's not the same. I'm going to buy the $4 salad mix because I know, okay, I can go home and make my wife and I a salad with that. I would rather buy that than buy the pound, even if the pound is cheaper. But there's a bulk box of sweet potatoes for $30. There's no way I'm buying a box of sweet potatoes. I just wouldn't know what to do with them. But there are lots of folks out there, large families or whatever, who want to share them with friends, neighbors, family members, who would be shopping based on that price and going, that is a really good deal, I'm going to buy that. So the more options, the greater the possibility that someone walking by is going to like one of those options. So there you have in the corner apples, 2 pounds, 3 pounds. Again, you're increasing the size of the purchase and decreasing the cost. That's appealing to folks. I want to talk for a moment about the bag of apples. We have two apple vendors at Asheville City Market. Initially, one sold in bags like that. So you come up and you say, okay, I'd like some. Now they could buy the apples by the pound. That remained an option, but they were selling them by these bags, different sized bags, and they would hold up the bag and say, this size bag costs this much, and you could pick and choose. And you can pick and choose by the pound too, but let me just, with a bag, folks would start putting the apples in the bag. They could, and again, now they know exactly, how much is it, 5 pounds of apples? I don't know. There are people who know, certainly the vendors know, but for a shopper, you can either buy them by the pound or you can buy them in these bags. And if you buy them by the bag, you can fill it up yourself and you'll know how many apples you're going to get. So again, more options. The one thing that's really fun about the apples in the bag is this, and I see this over and over again as I go by this particular booth. Folks will fill up their bags. The rare folk will have their bag, the apples are falling out, and they just can't fit another apple in the bag. Most customers will be slightly conservative and say they don't want to appeal to be greedy, or they're trying to get more than they're paying for. And then the vendor will say, I think you can fit another apple in there. Go ahead, put another one in there. Which one would you like? And that's just a powerful message of connection with the customer that typically is very much appreciated and can lead to loyalty and return visits by that customer. I will add that the second apple vendor, who only sold by the pound, after about a year has now started also selling by the bag in addition to by the pound. And I think they did that because they saw that the options were attractive to a different variety of folks than just selling by the pound. Creativity. This is a handful of peppers. Open your hand, palm down, facing down. Again, I'd never seen this before. It was a playful way of selling a product that was a sense of humor, but also kind of just fun. Oh, all right, here's something new. I'm going to reach my hand in here and see how many peppers I can get. So buy more options. Again, I don't know how this will work for all kinds of product, but I think being creative and just getting ideas is helpful. Shop weekly. At Asheville City Market, the market does some frequent shopper cards, sort of like, come and get your card stamped, like when you go to get a coffee and you get your coffee card stamped and then get a free coffee. Weekly previews. This is trickier, and this can be somewhat more of a market function, but vendors can also do things that encourage folks to come back. Again, I sort of am drawn to those things that involve more of an engagement with the customer. One example that I really like is one of our flower vendors has created a weekly contest where this flower vendor creates a bouquet. One of their bouquets is a secret bouquet, so that if you go to buy that one, it ends up being free. So the whole thing for their shoppers who buy flowers, and maybe has encouraged some folks to come back, because every week they get to sort of stare and play sort of a little game with the vendor, going, okay, which one's the free one today? And Facebook posted, and take pictures of the winning customer and prop it up on a little display at the booth. All these ways to engage the customer and encourage them to shop, come back, have some fun, creativity, shop more often. So the contest is an invitation of sorts to come back and shop again. Step back and evaluate. Going back to the very first slide, or even looking at this slide, there's nothing wrong with this display. There's lots of things that are good with the display, and the most important one probably is just beautiful produce. So it's not really about finding fault with how folks are displaying their product or how they're interacting with their customers. It's about finding the tips, the guides, the opportunities to, as the presentation is entitled, to sell more. So again, one way to approach this, especially if you're a market staff or a vendor going around to share information with other vendors, is not, boy, you don't have any signs, that's not very helpful. It's more like, what would probably help you sell more? Here are some ideas. And that's how the spirit of this presentation is, encouraging, offering opportunities for folks to make some changes where they can improve their sales, or at least experiment with those changes to see if sales are affected. Visit markets and take, this is a picture of our indoor market from a few years ago. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what's in this presentation and getting help from other folks, and I think that's the key. There's probably not too much out there that's brand new, never been done before. We did a workshop one year where we actually just went to markets and took notes and looked around. So part of this presentation is to continue and to suggest to folks that it's important to go around and see what other folks are trying and what they're doing, and talk to vendors. And vendors are very open about sharing what they've tried and what's worked and what hasn't worked. So visit markets, take notes. Sold out, see you next week. This is the vendor with the umbrella I spoke of, and I think you can appreciate that that is a different look, the way he set that up. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little sign that says more of everything next week. That's Pete, and he's looking very pleased with himself. At this point, I would distribute a workshop evaluation. There is going to be an evaluation for this webinar that you're going to be emailed by the end of the week. So I'd appreciate it if when you get that, you could respond. Now my technical assistant is going to help me shift gears to the next presentation. Let's take this opportunity to see if anybody had any questions. How are we doing for time? Okay, that took a while. So maybe we don't have a lot of time for questions, but if you, at any point now, if you have a burning question or you want to share something, go ahead and type it in there, and we'll see if we can succeed in getting some answers. Oh, thanks. I just have to say how strange this is to be sitting here talking to a computer. I'm kind of old school, and I wish we were all in the room together, but I hope just sort of previewing this information is helpful. And we're moving on to part 2. And I may need to just accelerate just a little bit. Again, all this is available online, so you want to just go through it at a slower pace. All right. The first presentation is directed at vendors. Ooh, there's questions coming. There's a question here. What do you think about farmers that present in cardboard? I don't know what I think about that. I'll say this. There's a wide spectrum of ways to display, going from very makeshift to very elaborate and sophisticated sort of, pretty things that cost a little bit of dollars to put together. And I think as long as it's being displayed with these other things in mind, like abundance and color and things like that, the cardboard doesn't bother me unless it's sort of the main message is that. All right, I'm gonna probably folks are typing, but I'm gonna move on to the second one, marketing and promotion. So the first one was directed at vendors. This is directed at me as a market manager. The marketing and promotion of a market, while certainly the vendors have a role to play, tends to fall on those of us who are leading or managing or hosting the farmers market, and that's what this presentation is directed at. If anybody's having any technical difficulties, I guess you'd let me know. All right, here we go. Time or money, yeah. The marketing and promotion of a market is inescapable that you're either going to need a budget to spend, or you're going to need some time for folks to do things, or you're going to need both. And this is a whole other. This is something that's actually on the draft schedule for the conference in December. It's talking about how markets can manage with limited resources, either limited time or limited money. There's something else I wanted to say about this. Oh, the thing I want to say about it is, I hear this. This is fairly often. There are folks who are concerned or feel constrained because their budgets are limited. And I understand that, and but I'll tell you this: markets that have a fairly healthy marketing budget, like Asheville City Market, we probably peaked at around $20,000 in marketing and promotion budget, and it's drifted down since then. That's not automatically the solution, is having the money to run print ads and things like that. So hopefully that'll come out as we go through the presentation. But if the money is limited, and it always is, time is something you need, whether it's staff, volunteers, or vendors. And I'll just put this little plug in there too. Vendor involvement, I now regard as sort of one of the pillars of promotion of the market. Oftentimes, vendors are preoccupied with their space, their own product, what they need to do. But in market settings where there aren't a lot of resources in terms of money or staffing or volunteers, obviously the vendors need to play a role. This is a bigger discussion that hopefully we'll have at the conference. I'd really like to talk more about this, about how to get vendors involved. But they are a key element, especially when other resources are limited. This is the same. We can go through this real quick. Marketing and promotion has the same goals. Attract more customers. This is typically one of its, maybe number one of the three. But we also have the same goals of increasing the frequency of visits. As a market manager, this is part of my job, to get folks to come more often and to buy more when they're there. So same sort of three breakdowns. I hope putting it in boxes helps folks. It helps me focus on, you can't just think about one thing. You have to constantly be reminding yourself, but how do we do these other goals? Which of the three am I working on here? Can I do something that addresses all three of the objectives in terms of improving sales? Again, in the making the most of your market handbook that comes with this workshop, or was handed out the workshop and is available online, I mentioned for the Sell More one document that you should look for, maximize your sales. This, marketing the market, it says page 1. I'm not sure what that's referring to. Don't be confused if you download Making the Most of Your Market, the handbook. It's a compilation of 3 different things. So it's not sequentially numbered. There's 3 different documents there that have been slammed together and bound, or digitally bound if you're getting it online. So you really have to sort of turn the pages or flip through them to get to wherever you want to be and what you're trying to find. But the title of the the document I'm sharing with you is Marketing the Market. Again, it is really captures excellent overview of the different things that folks should try, or that are opportunities to improve marketing and promotion. And then the special events is just a fun thing that was put out by the Farmers Market Federation in New York. It lists about 20 or 30 events per month, or topics like National Cabbage Week or whatever it is. That just helps give ideas for doing some fun promotions at the market. So because I spent a long time thinking about this, and because my mind works this way, I've put things into boxes, kind of like those 3 goals about improving sales, and I've labeled them by their initials, which comes out Mops. So Mops is just a tool to help folks think about, are we covering all the bases? Are we coming at this in all the different ways that we could? So let's look at those tools. They are marketing, outreach, promotion, and social media. And each of those, now marketing, some might argue that everything we're talking about here is marketing. Some might say, well, they're all promotional things. It's just language. It doesn't really matter. I create these boxes just to focus attention on the different elements of marketing and promotion. So what is marketing? In my little scheme, in my little boxes, marketing is paid advertising. So you need to pay attention to paid advertising when you're marketing and promoting a market. But I will also suggest to you that paid advertising gets maybe too much attention, or we worry too much about it. And when I say, I'm sorry, paid advertising includes not just advertising in newspapers, but anything print, any sort of e-newsletters, rack cards, signs, banners, billboards, and the rest. Like, this is a rack card from Asheville City Market from a year or so ago. And in terms of marketing, and now I'm talking about paid things, whether print things or ads or whatever, I think it is a best practice to have something like this. And when I say like this, I don't mean necessarily all glossy and designed and kind of expensive to print. What I'm saying is a rack card or a handout that gives the basic information about your market. It could be in black and white. It could be a half-size piece of paper. It could be a flyer printed out on a, in-house. It doesn't have to be full color like this. But every market should have something physically that they can distribute into the community. We distribute a lot fewer of these than we used to, and I just got distracted by a question. Hold on. But it's something that, as a minimum, I think that a market should have. I'm going to talk about social media. There's a question. Get to it in just a second. Don't let me forget. Ads. This is just a. Is there another one? Yeah. These ads are just. I love these ads. These ads for our South market, and I think that they, they're just great. Little berries in the box, and I have a whole series of these that we ran for our South market. And the truth is, I don't know that they made much difference. So you may hear me sound like I'm not big on paid advertising, like these print ads used for a newspaper. And I'm basing that on my own experience at an individual market. So again, there can be exceptions. I'm not telling you what works everywhere and what you should definitely do or not do, but I will suggest to you that paid advertising like print advertising, has limited impact. There was something the Asheville City Market South, which is this market. Maybe these advertisements helped us hang in there because we struggled for a while there. But it was something else that really made the difference, and it was fairly clear when it happened, which is a teaser because I'm coming to it. But print advertising, while it may have helped sustain us in the short term, it really didn't lead to a successful market. All right. And here's part of the problem. You may have heard all kinds of different rules or rules of thumb in terms of what paid advertising is like and what you need to do. But if this is true, I mean, this is difficult. We run an ad when we open the market just to remind people that we're back. But run 6 in a row or 6 over 3, you know, and how far can you space them out before they're not 6 exposures anymore and it all breaks down? So paid advertising is challenging. I really don't believe that the market has limited resources for paid advertising is done marketing and promotion. There's just, it's not the key. and tell me if you think I'm wrong. I'd really love to talk, you know, sit in a room and talk about this more. All right, we're in marketing for M, now we're in O is for outreach, and basically outreach is anything that is done away from the market in the community. You can go visit, we've done outreach to schools for plant sales and things, been at festivals and events out in the community. Outreach is going out into your community and finding a way to hook up where groups of people are meeting, whether it's another festival, and every community has events in the community where you know there are going to be a lot of folks there. It doesn't just have to be physically present at an event either. Their outreach includes, you know, hooking up with, for instance, we have a recycling event at the market, and while that's not outreach, to have the recycling, it's an annual event. It's not outreach to have that event. The folks who participate in the event and do the recycling are on their emails or lists and sending that information out far and wide to a bunch of other folks. So it's sort of digital outreach. By hosting that event, we're reaching a whole other groups of folks through the recycling contacts. P is for promotion. And the key to promotion is word of mouth. I thought that slide was going to say something different. Oh, all right. Word of mouth. If word of mouth is the most effective form of promotion, and it is, then this is a key to the whole Mops thing, the whole marketing and promotion effort. Word of mouth, another way of saying it, is give folks something to talk about, to share with their neighbors and friends, their family. Something that will spread from person to person. That that was oddly phrased. So what do you do at market? Gives folks something to talk about. And I sort of have broken these down in 3 little categories, again, just to help me think about, am I covering all the bases? Features I consider things to be happening every week. If there are kids activities every week, if there's live music every week, these are features of your market. Asheville City Market has access to restrooms. That's a feature. We don't put it in our publicity that much, but it's something that's always there, that we plan on routinely and that folks can expect, and might give them something to talk about. Now, if we're going to have the marimba band there, you know, I will feature that feature in our social media and in our any print advertising we're doing, because that also gives something to talk about. Festivals, events, celebrations at market are those special things that you do now and then, seasonally, whenever. And then incentives I'm going to talk about a little bit more as we move forward, because there are some fun incentives that the market can put out there that will give folks something to talk about. These are just examples of some of our advertising, the features, the events. You can see there at the bottom I have feature written next to the tokens. So having tokens for sale, whether for SNAP or credit or debit, is another something that folks should know about, something that should be shared out in the community. And this kind of just brings it all together. Musicians, the calendar of musicians, the Kids Corner Market, and the dates there on the left-hand side of the corner, saying what the different organizations that are going to be there for the Kids Corner Market, highlighting our bakers, the Kid Marimba Band, cooking demo, and you see down center at the bottom the info booth. Those are our partners coming on a couple times that year. plant days, special events. So promotion is word of mouth. And here's another way it fights with print advertising and paid advertising. Well, you can see what it says. Media, it's, again, I pick up these things and I share them with other folks. There's varying degrees of truth and varying degrees to which they apply to your situation. But the general rule is that media coverage is more valuable than paid coverage because folks have to see those ads over and over again and they're expensive. If the media will cover your market, and some are very fortunate and get media coverage every week, but others you need to sort of make that connection and give the media something to cover. The key here in terms of media coverage is consistent connectedness with the folks who are writing the stories or doing the radio or whatever they're doing, is to send to these, get to know them, and send these folks something every week. And send them, if it's print or visual, send them images every week. Send them the things, a story, write something, actually write the story. Everyone's busy, and folks who are in media are busy too. Folks who are covering news and events have lots of things that they can cover and lots of things they can talk about every week. If you consistently hand them, send them something that's virtually ready to go or that they can just tweak, it just makes their life easier and increases the likelihood or the possibility that what you're sharing will actually be covered by the media. So again, this is a time and money thing. I would argue that it is a better investment of time to hook up with your local media folks than having the money to just buy ads. Again, please buy ads. If you can afford to have ads, do them. I keep feeling like I'm being disrespectful of ads here. Okay. A while back I mentioned under promotions, incentives. And I talked about the ads that were run at Asheville City Market South and how ineffective they seem to be. This program at Asheville City Market South is what changed the market. This is the thing that increased attendance, customer awareness, improved the customer base, and it's a rewards program where folks sign up, they give me their email address. You can see from the form they can sign up for other ASAP things as well. But every week, yesterday afternoon, I sent out the weekly Market Mogul e-newsletter. And basically it said, here's what you can win, here's what the weekly shopper reward is going to be at market today, Wednesday, when the market's being held. We have a nursery, and he's going to be giving away 5 rose bushes, and the folks who are market moguls who have signed up are going to come and do a drawing, and if they pull the right colored chip out of the bag, they win a rose bush. Now this, to fully disclose, our host, Biltmore Park Town Square, cost of this. So they give us $125 a week, basically to pay our vendors to give away product. And we use that as a reward for the shoppers. This market, which is a smaller Wednesday market, now has close to 600 market moguls signed up. Every week I send out an email to almost 600 folks saying, come to market and have a chance to get your reward. I thought I might have sneaked another slide in here. This could not be replicated downtown at our Saturday market, basically because we don't have someone writing us a check every week. But you can do it, and we're doing it at Asheville City Market downtown on Saturdays by inviting the vendors to contribute prizes, rewards, product, discounts, whatever, on a weekly basis, and we rotate them through every month. I'm not going to go on and on about this, but if you're interested in this, I've got more recent coupon sheets that we've created for May and June where we hand out to the customers to claim their prizes, some flyers and other things. So I'm going to answer this question. Who did you say covers the cost? The host. The host at the Asheville City Market South, which is Biltmore Park Square, as a way to support the market in their development, in their community development there, is underwriting the cost. So certainly a sponsor is nice to have because you can just, and it's nice that that money goes from the sponsor through the customer right into the vendor's pocket. So it's really ideal. But I appreciate that not everyone is getting a check written to them every week to do this. So we've been doing this. The Market Mogul program has been going on for years now. The downtown market just started it this past year that we opened in April, and I would be enthusiastic about sharing the results of that and how it's working with y'all. If you have questions, just send me an email later, and I can share some images, and I can keep you posted. And I want to say, while I'm thinking about it, this conference that's coming up in Winston-Salem in December, part of what it's about is trying to figure out how we can connect like this and do peer support and get in the room together, digitally or otherwise, and ask each other questions and really learn from one another's shared experiences. So I'm pretty excited about that, and because it's really frustrating to try to talk to you this way and share it and get a back and forth on what works and what doesn't. Anyway, social media. There was a question a few moments ago, do we spend a significant amount of money on social media marketing? The answer is no, we do not. Social media, word of mouth, look, it's, I'm not social media savvy. That's, by the way, the title of a possible workshop at the conference. So we have our Facebook page. Go ahead and visit it. We have a couple thousand followers on the page. I've been trying to do Twitter. I actually been trying not to do Twitter. Instagram. There's something called Meetup we're trying, where folks get emails about meeting up. We send the e-newsletters out, which I consider to be a form of social media. Let me see what the next slide is here. Okay, so there's our Facebook page. Okay. S, social media, the last of the four. What do I want to say about social media? Social media is, in my opinion, is more of a time than a money thing, and I'm not sure what in terms of the question that came in about spending money on it. Maybe that's also talking about spending money to have the time to do it. It's taken me a while, and again, I'm not an expert, but it's taken me a while to better appreciate what social media is. It's not paid advertising. Although we post on our Facebook page information about shopping, it's in its truest form, it's social interaction, which is, I guess, stating the obvious, but it took me a long time to sort of get it, and I hope I'm getting it now. But one of our vendors had a baby, so we posted it. This vendor had a baby. And we do post things about the market and the products that are available there. Here's a post of a duck that was made out of veggies at the market. Social media that's used for advertising needs to be a little bit careful that it's staying true to the idea of social media. And one of the flaws I've found, one of the challenges of social media, for instance, using Facebook as an example, if you look at that page and you see that little black square, that's the City Market logo, and those are posts by me or by our assistant manager, and that's all you see. There are no posts on this page from vendors. And for social media to work, and I'm going to say this like I know what I'm talking about, but it's sort of the way I feel about it right now. You really do need to engage your customers, and everyone kind of needs to get involved in it. The vendors too, and vendors are busy, and this is an easy thing to not do. Now we'll have vendors who respond to posts, and that's great. But some of you who know more about social media than I do know that the more folks who post and cross-reference and link, and it just starts to build into quite a significant impact compared to just a single post with no links, no likes, no whatever. And I'm not talking about just Facebook here. So it's one of those things that feel to me like it's kind of something you need to address. Social media you need to have a presence. And I'm including a web page there in social media, although I really shouldn't. A web page isn't social media, but that digital presence, like a web page, like a Facebook page, pick whichever other one that you're interested in, Instagram, the rest of them. You need to have some level of presence there, because it's another layer of opportunity. I do a little sketch in some of these presentations where I put the difference between $10,000 and $100,000. It's like a chart, and you go, okay, how do we get from $10,000 of sales in a year to $100,000 of sales in a year? And the answer is you get it incrementally, one tiny little line at a time. So if you go, okay, we're at 10,000, let's have live music per week. How much does that add? Well, there's this little thin layer. It adds, man, maybe it adds $5 a week. And I can tell you there is nothing that you can do that increases the amount of sales drastically in a short period of time. If there was, I would have made one slide and we would have ended about 50 minutes ago. So I looked for it, I longed for it, but really all the improvements that you make, either as a vendor trying to sell more, or as a market trying to attract customers or increase their visitation and so forth, change is incremental, one piece at a time. Social media is part of that. You know, when we didn't have a Facebook page, there was a hue and cry from the vendors. We had to have a Facebook page. You know, it was going to make all the difference in the world. And we got a Facebook page. We got a couple thousand, you know, pushing 3. I don't know where it is right now. I think it's like 2,500. We have a fairly good number of folks following it. What difference does it make? It made some difference. I can tell you that it didn't make a drastic difference, but it made some difference. So getting back to the time and money thing, many of us who manage markets or support markets or vend at markets don't have the time and money to do everything. None of us do, to do everything. So we pick and choose those things, and that's part of what this Mops thing is. You know, look at those boxes and go, can we afford to do some paid advertising? Can we get it out there in a way that's consistent, that folks will see it a number of times? If not, all right, we're not going to do paid advertising. Let's do a rack card, or let's do a flyer about our market. Let's spend our money in those ways. So pick and choose, experiment, but don't be misled into thinking that there's something out there that you could do that you're not doing that is going to make a huge difference in a short period of time. It just isn't there. You have to just plug away at it. I think I just got sort of digressed here. Let's. I want to stop. I just realized that I have 10 minutes for Snap. Come back and look at these. There's time and money again. That's the story. I will say customer counts and vendor sales reports are important if you're trying to track the success of your market over time and what your initiatives are and what impact they may be having. And I could talk a lot more about that, but if you're interested in particularly vendor sales reports, which seems to be a headache for folks to pull off, email me and we can do that separately. Comments, questions, concerns? Okay. I'm getting technical assistance to switch to the final section here, so type in some questions if you've got any in this little break here. And I want to thank Kristen, who's in the room here, helping me have a successful webinar, at least. No questions. All right, that's okay. Email me. Come to the conference in December. Let's talk some more. Snap. I guess I'm almost fine with that we don't have a lot of time left, because Snap, more than anything else, is a discussion that has to be customized to individual markets and their circumstances. I'm going to run through these slides, and even some of this information is now dated, but there's some really excellent resources available online, either in that handbook that I talked about. They're actually posted separately. This is one of them. It's a little even in 2013 now. It's dated, but boy, I wish I had this when we were starting Snap at Asheville City Market. It is really, really good. As is this resource that's put out by ASAP, Sharing the Harvest. If you're interested in doing Snap, or if you're offering Snap, you really need to page through these two documents. I think you'll just see things that click, that you already learned, or some things you hadn't thought about, or some things you need to think about in terms of a Snap program. CSAs there is an opportunity for Snap to be used to fund CSAs. Email me if you have a question about that. There's not a lot to say about it, but let's do that separately if you have a specific CSA question related to Snap. Are you currently offering Snap planning? Do you have a CSA? Should your market offer SNAP? This was, I think, in one of the pre-questions that when you registered, folks sent me some questions because I asked you to. Should your market offer SNAP? It depends what you're trying to accomplish, because there are different reasons to offer SNAP. I work for ASAP, and the market I manage is managed by ASAP, and part of ASAP's mission is to increase access to local foods. So Asheville City Market was going to offer SNAP, and is going to continue to offer SNAP, if only because it's part of our mission to increase access to local food. Will it increase sales? This was also a question that was brought up in the pre-questions that were sent in with registration. Yes, maybe. Enough to make it worth doing? That's circumstantial, and that depends on your situation. I've got tons of data that I can share about SNAP sales at Asheville City Market, but you are not Asheville City Market. Your circumstances and situation are different. But I can share with you that part of the decision on whether you should offer SNAP certainly is about the community. It's certainly about providing access to folks in the community who have SNAP resources. If you're thinking, but you need to weigh those things carefully, because if you're also believing that it's increased sales, if you're thinking that sales are going to now jump 20%, that's not likely going to happen. Now, over time, again, revisiting what I said a moment ago, there's nothing you can do that will make a significant change in a short period of time. SNAP sales over time, now it's a different conversation. And really, this whole presentation is about having a conversation. So I'm a little frustrated, but let's just press on with, and maybe the information I'm sharing will help you ask questions or think about it more. Can your market offer SNAP? And the answer is yes. And the reason I know that your market can offer SNAP is because so many different kinds of markets offer SNAP and have successfully done it. From very tiny markets with half a dozen vendors to Carborough to the largest markets in the state. So if they can offer SNAP, you can offer SNAP. It's not the question of whether you should. The question is, can you? And the answer is yes. And there are folks out there that can help you with that as well, more so than in the past. Startup assistance is available. If you don't have SNAP and you're interested in it, Google Market Link. And there's a new one to add to this, Farmers Market Coalition. Go to their website. It's probably still in their banners that flash by their homepage. They're offering assistance. The detailed assistance are beyond this webinar, but if you're interested in offering SNAP, you need to check at Market Link, and you need to check at Farmers Market Coalition online. And then if you have any questions, email me, because I'll be happy to go back and forth with you about the details of this. Some of it's straightforward, and some of it you need to think about just a little bit more. Local banks and merchants are possible sponsorships, particularly since an element of SNAP is merchant services that are provided can be provided through banks. Cost coverage, I'm feeling a little anxious about time, but basically there are 3 ways to cover the cost. There are 4 ways to cover the cost of a SNAP program, or of a token program in general, and that is the vendors, a sponsor, a grant, or some combination of those 3. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Most markets operating right now are doing a centralized market program. I'm going to tell you what that is in a little bit more in a minute. There's been an increasing push or opportunity, shall I say, for individual vendors to process SNAP, and this is something that MarketLink is offering as an option. Even if I had another hour, it would be sufficient to go through the opportunities and constraints of these 2 options, but I'd be happy to follow up with you all. Centralized program means that the SNAP can be accepted throughout the market. There's a requirement for coordination. There's one FNS number, one bank account, one merchant services account. This is the token program where the shopper comes to a central location, purchase tokens, they go and make their purchase with the vendors, the tokens are collected, there's an accounting done, and the vendors are reimbursed. We have a centralized program at Asheville City Market. I have handout materials I'd be happy to send to you if you're interested. The redemption payments are every 2 weeks, and the costs for this token program at Asheville City Market are covered completely by fees, which may be, well, it's one of the ways. I was going to say maybe it's not the most common way, but it's one of the ways of covering the costs of SNAP and a token program in the market. If you do individual sales processing, which means the vendor themselves is processing the transaction, the market's less involved. The SNAP access is dependent on the number of vendors in the market who actually have gone through the steps to accept SNAP, and then you have the multiple FNS numbers, bank accounts, and so forth, and associated costs of multiple delivery or processing systems. This is what's, I almost don't want to talk about this, but MarketLink is offering, with some guidelines and constraints in terms of who can access it, some free hardware, some reduced cost processing in the initial 1, 2, and 3 years. Startup basis, you need an FNS number. A social security number is required except under certain circumstances that can be avoided or not done. There needs to be some sort of hardware. And this could be the terminals that you slide the card through, or it could be an attachment to a smartphone with an application to run the processing. Tokens, if it's a centralized program, a merchant services account to get the money from the customer through the market or the vendor into the appropriate bank account, and then of course the bank account, and a 5-year draft budget. The main thing in exploring a SNAP program, and even if you're in one, is figuring out how it's sustainable over time. There's a lot of assistance up front right now to get a SNAP program started, both with hardware and regular costs in the initial 1, 2, and 3 years. The question is what happens in year 4 and 5, and that's why I say at the bottom here a 5-year draft budget. So if you do a program for 3 years and you don't know what's going to happen in the 4th year, that's not necessarily the worst thing that can happen. You just know that in the 4th year something has to change, because having a 3-year program work that you can afford is a fine way to start and a good thing. In the documents that I shared earlier on, there is a lot of information about what makes a SNAP-friendly market, and also a lot of information about partnerships, outreach, and promotion. Again, part of SNAP, successful SNAP programs, goes back to the sell more and the marketing elements. You know, I share with folks that the key to our SNAP program in Asheville City Market is Trish, the assistant manager of the market, who is the person who typically sells those tokens to participants, to SNAP vendors. She is friendly, she is consistent, she's concerned about the customers, that they understand the program, and has made a connection with many customers with SNAP benefits that I think have made them loyal customers and brought them back from week to week. But some level of consistent and friendly staff, and then other ways that you can, and we've been working a lot on this ideas here, but sampling of food that folks can buy with SNAP, low-cost seasonal recipes. There's lots of ideas out there. Incentives can be an idea that are really gaining a lot of focus and a lot of funding recently, and it's still, and that, so there's a lot out there about incentives, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about incentives separately. I'm sensitive about time. Here we go. How close are we? Look at these resources. There are a lot of opportunities for, you don't need to read this slide. If you look at resources, the partnership ideas are there. I'm not going to talk about the mysteries of merchant services. I'm now going to end with questions, and I see ones here. The question is, how do you handle staffing for the SNAP program? Not only at the market, but the reconciliation outside the market. That's the seems to be. Yes, if you have a centralized token program, you have to spend some amount of time, and I'm going to say 3 hours-ish a week, away from the market, dealing with the transactions and the tokens that you're dealing with. At Asheville City Market, we have myself, the market manager, and assistant who sits at the table throughout the whole market from 8 to 1, selling both SNAP and credit and debit tokens. So we have 2 staff at market. Right away, we're off. That's a problem. For many markets don't even have 1 staff person there from beginning to end. So if it's not a staff person, this can be a challenge. But the key for this is there are other markets who have similar constraints who still pull it off, whether they have a vendor volunteering to do it, maybe a vendor whose customer load is fairly level and doesn't get overwhelming, or a volunteer or a partner, a sponsor that comes in on a regular basis and does the transactions at market. If you have a centralized system, someone has to take the tokens back to the office, count them, figure out who gets what, keep track of the inventory. Like I said, this past weekend I spent, it was cutting a checks weekend, so it was a little bit more than usual, but 2.5 to 3 hours away from market processing the tokens. Again, but the thing I want to say, yes, it is a challenge, and it isn't going to go away, and whatever path you choose, when you have SNAP or credit or debit, there are always challenges associated. Whichever way you go, there are challenges associated with those choices. But other markets are doing, other markets that are in your situation can and have successfully figured it out. And this is a networking thing where we need to get together and have folks talk to each other in similar circumstances. What would you say if one of your vendors doesn't want to participate in the SNAP program? Okay, Asheville City Market is an exception. When we started up in 2008, we were a new market and run, by a nonprofit with a professional manager in place. So we set up the rules, and there's an expectation at Asheville City Market that you kind of go along with the rules, and if the rule, everyone accepts SNAP, then everyone's going to accept SNAP. And that's just not true everywhere. I mean, you have other markets that have been around a long time. Change is challenging and can be, vendors can question it. So if one of my vendors doesn't want to accept SNAP, if I was in that situation, I would do a big picture discussion with them. I don't know that we have vendors, let me just say this. We have vendors in the market, every vendor at the market pays $3 every Saturday for the SNAP program. And every vendor at the market does not equally receive the same number of tokens. There are some people who are paying $3 a week and they don't sell any tokens. And some vendors that can't even sell SNAP tokens because they're arts and crafts. So this is a finesse thing, and we're all in a getter thing. I mean, it depends on the individual vendor. I would say this: having all the vendors accept SNAP who have SNAP-eligible foods is a best practice. It's the most SNAP-friendly practice that a market can have. So the goal is to get there. The answer to your question is it's hard, and if you end up having a vendor that doesn't want to do it or refuses to do it, and that's the situation that you're in, then I would just work all more with the vendors who are willing to do it and making them successful and having the SNAP customers access their booths to spend their resources there. We are 5 minutes past 10:30, so or a few minutes past 10:30. So I'm going to end now, and please take the opportunity if you had questions that weren't answered, and I hope that's the case because there weren't a lot of questions, to email me and I will get back to you. And thank you all for participating. I certainly hope this was helpful. Signing off.